founded many successful companies, including Air Defense, Cipher Trust, Core Harbor, Secure IT, and Zscaler. Mr. Chaudhry is a trusted advisor for many enterprise chief information officers and chief information security officers. So if you would, please join me in welcoming Mr. Jay Chaudhry. Thank you.
Kevin, thank you for the generous introduction. It is my pleasure to share my thoughts about enabling a hybrid workplace securely. I'm going to start my slides. Let's see. Good. Okay. So let me start with talking about the need for hybrid workplace. We have been becoming mobile for the last several years. It so happened that COVID made all of us very, very much mobile, where we had to work from anywhere and everywhere. One of the key challenges to support that ends up being security. So let me start by talking about some of the challenges we face in cyber that are growing every day. I won't spend too much time on some of these cyber issues, but if you look at some of the attacks that we're seeing out there, and the stats I'm sharing with you actually are from our Zscaler threat labs, some 110% increase in phishing attacks. And governments are being targeted significantly as well. The number of botnets that are operating on encrypted channel is going up some 426%. And these attacks are also using TLS and SSL channels. That means they're trying to hide themselves. So attacks are growing. We're trying to work from anywhere. The problem starts getting more complicated. Moving on to the next slide. I won't dig too much into it, but with the Russian conflict that started a couple of months ago, we see of all kinds of attacks out there that are increasing, and we need to be extra mindful of those attacks. And let me switch gear and move on to why work from home or work from anywhere is very different. I'm going to move to the next slide. Probably, if I can do my own slide sharing, it may be a little easier if you don't mind, because I got a few animations. Let me try that. Could I? All right, I'm going to do this. I'm going to share my slide directly, and here you go.
There you go.
Good. You should be able to see my screen coming up. This is good. All right. All right. So what I'm going to show you is how we have been working for the last several years and how things are changing. What we've done over the past 30-some years, we've built hub and spoke networks that connected our various branch offices to our data center where applications have been. And then the data center is essentially protected by a host of appliances, routers, switches, firewalls, and the like. And then we protected applications. This model has worked pretty well because data center was the center of the universe. But what we are seeing in the recent years is a few things. One, all of us are essentially embracing application transformation. What do I mean by that? Well, we are embracing cloud, which is happening in the way of embracing SaaS applications like Office 365 or Salesforce, or public cloud like Azure and AWS. And as we said, we are all working from anywhere, working from home or wherever. Now, as we do this, our users are working from all kinds of places. Our applications are out there. This hub and spoke network isn't really helping us a whole lot. Because why should we go to a choke point to go to our applications? Hence, network transformation needs to be done. And the network transmission requires us to be able to go direct. If I'm working from home, why should I come to the office? Why should I come to my data center to go out? Hence, we're all trying to go direct to where the applications are. It's like, why would I fly from San Francisco to Chicago via Dallas? It's too slow. I want to go direct. Hence, user experience matters. But if we try to do that, security breaks because traditionally, security is sitting in the data center. So we need to go through different kinds of security. Because the old model of castle and moat no longer works, in the new model, where we like to call zero trust architecture, where applications are anywhere, users are everywhere, and you essentially go through a zero trust exchange, which is like a switchboard, which connects the right party to right party. It's the opposite of traditional security we had done with firewalls and VPNs. This is no longer castle and moat. If you do application, network, and security, all three transformation, you actually achieve the benefit of what we call digital transformation, because we are trying to make our businesses more agile and more competitive. Now, why are we facing some of these risks when we work from home or wherever? Let me walk you through some of the challenges we face because of the traditional network and security architecture. Architectures don't change very often. The last network architecture was created in late 80s and became popular in early 90s. Till then, IBM proprietary networks dominated. In the new architecture, companies like Cisco were born, where they said, using IP-based networking, I will extend your data center to every branch office. So a user could go to a branch office, get on the network, and access any application in the data center. It was wonderful life. Then we want to work from home. So we invented VPN. So we could extend our corporate network to every household because you logically get on the network and access applications. And that became our remote way of working. And as we are embracing cloud, we are extending a network to every cloud regions. And when we want to have no boxes in our branches, we are trying to spin virtual firewalls. This architecture has been good for networking, but it creates some security issues. That's where I want to explain the statement, the problem statement that sets the stage for zero trust security. So first of all, the bad guys, if they want to come after us, they want to find us. Now, how do they find us? Every IP address that opens to the internet, that resolves to the internet, is an attack surface. The more IPs you have, the more firewalls that open to the internet, the more VPNs you have, the bigger your attack surface to find you. Hence, the goal should be, how do I hide my attack surface? And zero trust architecture allows you to do that. Number two ends up being, these bad guys, they want to compromise you. Every bad thing comes from the internet. And if we start inspecting internet communication by using a zero trust exchange, just like an international airport where you're inspecting who is going in, who is going out, we can prevent compromise. Number three, bad guys, if they compromise someone like a weakest link or user, they want to move laterally to find high value targets. A single infected machine that could be sitting in some household on a VPN, since it's on your network, it can traverse laterally and bring everything down. That's what happened to Maersk, the mega shipping company, a couple of years ago. Getting on a traditional routable network is like getting on Highway 80 in San Francisco. And I can reach New York, Miami, Dallas, or Chicago without hitting a single light, which is wonderful. But it is also wonderful for bad guys who can traverse the whole thing. Hence, preventing lateral movement becomes very important. Fourth thing, every bad guy, once they come in, they want to steal your data. And all data that's stolen gets sent to the internet. So like an international airport, if you could be inspecting any communication of the internet for any data loss, you can prevent data loss. So one should be looking at security holistically, eliminate attack surface, prevent compromise, prevent lateral movement, and prevent data loss. Now, out of these four things, the hardest is to figure out what do you mean by being able to stop lateral movement? Well, you connect users to applications, not to the network. And people say, how can you reach applications without being on the network? So we came up with a simple analogy to explain it. If I come to see you at your headquarters, big, nice headquarters, which is well protected, and adjacent buildings are all interconnected, they stop me at the receptionist. That's the only way to get it. They're going to stop me, check my ID, give me a badge. And imagine if they said, Jay, without an escort, go to room 22. If they did so, I could go in, wander around, go to any room that's open, and even go to adjacent buildings that are open, and snoop around and leave. That's not a good idea, right? That's why no good company allows people to go out there unescorted. Now, when your people get on your network using traditional network architecture, using traditional firewall VPN-based network security, you can go to any of these assets and try to exploit them. How do you fix this with zero trust security? In this example, on the right side of my slide, what we do is we kind of say, look, first thing we do is let's remove big logos on the buildings. They can't even find where you are, because if they can't find you, they won't be able to attack you. 2, let's remove these interconnected buildings. So if someone got in, they can't laterally move and go to all the buildings. Let's remove the reception area farther away. And if I need to see you, they stop me at the reception. They're going to check my ID. They'll give me a badge. And they'll say, Jay, stop. You will be escorted to room 22. But before you go there, we're going to check your suitcase for any dangerous material. That's malware. If all that is good, you'll be escorted to the meeting room. And your meeting happens. And then you simply get walked out, period. In this metaphor, the building is like your data center. A room is like your application. A second building is like your Azure data center or Azure cloud. The third building is like your AWS. So connecting the right person to right application is what the zero trust is all about. Now, why does it matter? Because in this model, you don't need to be on the network on which the applications are. In this model below, your applications are simply destinations. Your users or devices are shown at the bottom. They're working there anywhere and everywhere. They're not on the corporate network. And for any user to access any applications, which could be one of the two areas, applications that you run and manage in your data center or cloud, on the right side, applications that are managed by others, such as you access Office 365 and Internet. You go through a zero trust exchange, which is like a switchboard. The first thing that gets done before you're connected is identity. Remember my example, receptionist, who are you? So we verify identity. The second thing, identity may be stolen. So let's not stop there. Let's check a few things like device profile, device posture. Let's do behavior analysis of traffic, continuously do risk assessment to see if certain things are good or bad. And if that looks good, the next thing get checked is traffic to see if there are any malicious stuff, any phishing type of attempts, so they could be prevented. The fourth thing, you could check for data loss. Is anything confidential, proprietary being sent? The next thing you could do is define policy. This user can access only this application. It doesn't really matter where the user is. Like my previous example, the user could only go to room 22 and 22 only. And once all this is good, you get connected to external application in a normal way. But if you need to access your internal applications, that's done by a very cool new approach using a little connector technology. You open an inside-out connection. So there's no outside-in connection allowed. That means your application gets hidden behind the zero trust exchange, behind this cloud. That means your attack surface goes away. Bad guys can't find you. Only people who are properly authorized, they can access those applications. That's really the key concept of zero trust architecture. This is opposite of firewall and VPN-based architecture because firewalls and VPNs were used all along the past 30 years are largely to create a moat around a castle. In the model where you're working from home, where applications are everywhere, it's impossible to keep on creating those moats. They don't help at all. Now, I am so excited that the federal government has taken a very progressive stance and actually gone forward and made serious attempt to really have agencies implement zero trust architecture. And they not only said, go and implement zero trust architecture, they work with NIST and say, here is the definition of zero trust. Because if they don't do it, different vendors who are getting disrupted by this architecture, they end up reclaiming and everyone starts saying, I do zero trust. Customers get confused. It doesn't help. So I encourage all of you who are attending this thing, take a look at these very well-written documents by the government offices. They help you get a better understanding of zero trust architecture, which can't be built with firewalls or VPN. It's a new approach. It's almost as different as moving from internal combustion engine cars to electric cars. The two are very different. In fact, it's funny when we talk to customers about this. Sometimes they look at zero trust and they say, where is my network access control? Well, if you don't put people on the network, your users come from home and wherever. It doesn't matter. They're not on the network. You don't need some of the older technologies like NAC. It's like if you bought a Tesla and you open the hood and say, where is my engine oil? Well, there isn't any. You don't need any. Similarly, zero trust architecture changes many things. Zero trust security makes things simple. You simply have users access any application from anywhere, and you can redirect the traffic using some lightweight endpoint agent that kind of say, go through this exchange where policy enforcement happens, and you can connect to internal applications using a set of rules, and you connect with external application using a set of rules. Now, if you come back to the office, the same policy, same protection applies. There's no reason why a user should have a different experience. So that's one part. There's another piece there, user experience. A hybrid workplace enablement is not just about secure and fast access to applications. It's also about reliable access to applications. Experience must be good. Now, there are several approaches that have been used for doing user experience. The old approaches were traditionally network-based performance monitoring, my Office A to my data center. Well, the applications are not in data center that often. There may be some, but some are in the cloud. Users aren't sitting in the branch office. So the right approach ends up being you think about user-centric approach, not a network device-centric approach. Your endpoint agent can start collecting telemetry for all users from all locations, no matter where the user is, for the application you care about. It is like it's like taking temperature and pulse of a person to make sure the health is good. And if something seems to go wrong, you can smartly start collecting more information. But providing user experience becomes a fundamental requirement in this new architecture. Okay. And I'll give you a couple of examples of what can be done when you figure out a good user experience. For example, there could be cases where you can create the overall experience score of a company. What's the overall experience of people? And then you can dig deeper down. There could be situations, for example, a specific user is having issues from a certain office. Perhaps the user has some issues with their own device. Being able to narrow down where the issue is, that becomes important. Perhaps a destination application, a single application is slow. How do you isolate it? Well, it can be done, especially if you're in a cloud model and the provider of the service has lots of other customers as well. You can have this network effect where you can start seeing this application is slow for all users, and it makes it easier to identify some of those areas which can't be done otherwise. And quite often, we see that the experience issue ends up being the home Wi-Fi in a hybrid environment. Sometimes there's a significant packet loss. But being able to detect an issue is the important starting point to be able to fix it. And this is where experience becomes very important for a user's point of view. Now, in this new world, customers are looking for simplification, standardization, automation, and also equally important, elimination of all the technology. In this model where you can work from anywhere, you select your application like SaaS application, you select your data center, you select your cloud providers. They're merely